All right, so we learned a little bit about creating like an infinite wave. Now let's take a look at how we can create damage. I'm going to make one script. So let's right click in here and just call this health, or we'll call this ship health. Now this script will be used for both the enemy ship, as well as the player ship, because a lot of the functionality in the code could be reused. And this is the way I want you to think. And we'll get into things like, you know, inheritance and how that stuff works, where um, anything that's a ship, will have a health script and it'll inherit from this like health script or from another script similar attributes so that you don't have to do a lot of recoding in every script. And, because we're getting more into object oriented programming now. Another thing is we'll create another script here and we'll just make it in scripts here. And it's just going to be called damage. And again, this damage script could be used on asteroids that kind of fly in, enemy spaceships, rocks that come at you, lasers when they hit the ship, and anything that can cause damage to our player. So let's go ahead and delete these. And for now, we'll have a single variable in here, and it's a serialized field. And it's just going to be of type integer, and it's just called damage. Now remember, we have this set as private, so we'll give this a little value to 5f or something. And we could always adjust this in the inspector. So let's save that. Oh, 5, it's a integer, so there's no decimal. And remember, we need to create a getter method. And I installed this this AI, and I actually started writing out which is kind of cool. Not an AI. I installed GitHub Copilot. You can see your GitHub Copilot online, and so it has all these code suggestions, which I suggest that you guys do the same, especially if you have a student version, and that'll give you some good ideas of, oh, okay. But what I generally suggest is if you're brand new to coding, you can hit tab and let it code it for you. But I would actually hit tab and then I would recode this yourself and really look at this so that you get a little bit of practice, not only coding, but understanding like what's going on. So for example, this method here is public and it can be called outside of the script to get damage. And all this does is return the number 5 as of now, or whatever we set it for in our inspector. All right, so let's take a look at this health script too. So we have our ship health. I'm going to drag that in. And same thing as before. I'm going to be a little bit lazy here and just kind of jump over to my damage script and just grab these. Or well, I'll just grab this because we're going to, you probably guessed it. So instead of in damage here, we're going to call this health. And let's say that our ships start off with 100 health. And what we want to do is we want to connect this ship script to this damage script. And so, for instance, like on trigger enter, as we enter, and it's going to be a on trigger enter 2D. Do not forget the 2D, and then collider 2D here. Otherwise, it won't work because there's an on trigger enter, which is for 3D objects, and there's on trigger enter 2D, which is for 2D games. So what we want to do is as we collide with chips or other objects, we want to subtract from our damage script the amount of damage. So what we can do is in the past, we just created a variable here of type damage, and we used it to access the damage script or get component on the object itself. But the thing is, I really want to place the damage script onto each ship or each object separately and then adjust it. So for example, if I have many different ships and you run into one ship and it's a tiny ship and it just takes off a little bit of damage, then I want to be able to adjust that damage value to like 5. If it's a huge ship, I want it to subtract 100 and it would destroy our ship immediately. So what I'm going to do is place this damage script on the different objects. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that on here. So here's my enemy ship, and I'll drag this damage script. So for example, on this one, say if I run into this one, because it's a bigger ship, it takes off 100 damage and it just destroys us immediately. So how do I get this damage script from my enemy when I run into it? Well, what I can do is I can just, instead of writing it outside of here, creating the variable to get that outside of here, I can just say, hey, damage, and then I'll just make a lowercase damage here. Actually, that was really good that it found that for me. But damage under lowercase damage equals other dot get component, and then the type of scripts we're going to get, which is damage here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Control S here to save that. Um, and that's pretty helpful. One thing to notice though with GitHub Copilot is you want to ask yourself and do the research too and be like, well, sometimes it'll recommend code that isn't optimized or isn't the best for what you're doing. I think for our simple scripts, it's been doing a pretty good job. So what it's saying here is this variable damage here is going to store um, a reference to that damage script. We haven't gotten actually how much damage it is, right? Like this variable damage. So as we bump into the other object, it's going to look for this script. And if it exists, we haven't actually checked if it's null or not, but if it exists, we're going to store this in here. And then what we can do is we can say, there we go. If damage is not equal to null, that means if the damage script exists on our other object, health, we subtract health, which is 100 minus or equal to damage.getDamage. And remember, getDamage here is this method here that was created for us. And then what we could do is just for now is we can just print it out to our console health plus health. And then we could also add another check to see, well, if damage is less than or equal to 0, or I'm sorry, if health is less than or equal to 0, we destroy our game object. Now, because this script itself handles the health, I don't necessarily want to destroy the object in the same ship that's a health, right? What I'd like to do is I'd like to create another damage. So I'm just going to select all of this. I'm going to hit Control D, and I'm going to name this destroy ship. And then what I'll do inside of here is I'll just destroy game object. And we're not returning int, we're returning public void. Actually, because I'm going to add this damage script to other objects, I'm going to say destroy object and not destroy ship. Because what happens is if my ship crashes into another ship, I want it to destroy whatever object I run into. But it could also be a rock, like I said, or a laser or whatever, and I want that to get destroyed as well. So inside of here, my ship health, what I want to do is, this is where I'll actually take the damage and subtract it from health. All right, so inside of here, let's make another method. We're just gonna call this a method called take damage, and I'm gonna hit Control and period, and I'm gonna create a method called take damage. Now what this is going to do is, let's pass in an integer and type damage. And what'll happen here is we will call this take damage script as we bump into, if damage is not equal to null, we will pass in, let's see, we're getting an error here because we have damage here and we have a value here called damage. Maybe we could change this to, let's hit F2 on this to rename it and name this damage amount, because it's getting confusing because our class is damage and this is called damage. So let's hit next. And then I'm going to get rid of this formally serialized field here. And I'm going to save this. And let's see, where am I getting an error? Oh, this error here. So what I'm going to say here is, remember, we have access to this component here. So I'm going to say damage dot damage amount. Oh, or get damage rather, because get damage is going to return the amount of damage here. So what happens is we have this method call, which will call this method here, right? So if I double click this, it highlights it, and then it's going to pass in get damage. And actually, this is actually spelled wrong too. Oh no, that's right. Man, it just looks weird. So here's damage amount. Let's see. Okay, so we have ship health here, and we're saying take damage is integer damage here. And what we'll do inside of here actually is, let's see, on trigger enter, if damage is not equal to null, we'll call our take damage. We'll grab these and we'll paste it in here. And then what I can do, let's see, minus damage, because this is what's getting that damage, which is the 100 from our ship. It's health minus equals health. And then what we can do here is we can say, okay, I'll get rid of this line too. We don't really need this because this will be enough of a visual indicator. If health is less than or equal to 0, because there could be times when we go less. We don't want to make it equals zeros, because say we get hit by a rocket and that takes 10 off, and then we hit minus 100. If we say equals 0 here, we have minus 10, which is not the same as 0. So this way, at least we're saying, hey, if it's less than or equal to 0, if our health dips below, we're going to destroy game object. So this will actually destroy our ship object. I think that's a pretty clean way. And then our game's small enough. We would probably, if our game was much bigger, we'd probably have a separate class that handles all of the damage taking. But this is a pretty small script. The other thing I want to do is, as we enter the trigger of the other object, I also want to destroy the object. And that's going to be, we could name it, yeah, destroy object is fine. So in here, we'll destroy this game object. And here we're going to use damage to call the destroy object script here. So once we collide with it, if damage is not equal to null, I'm just going to say damage dot destroy object. So I'll go ahead and save that out. Let's go ahead and test this. And actually, we need a trigger. We need to mark the object as a trigger because we're using on trigger enter. And if we look at our enemy ship here, we don't have this is trigger selected, and we don't have as trigger selected on either collider, on our player or our enemy. So if we ran this right now, nothing would work if we ran into the other ship. Another thing we want to make sure is both the enemy ship and the player, the z-axis is set at 0, because we want them to be on the same physical plane. Otherwise, they won't run into each other. All right, so let's select our enemy ship here and make sure that it has the damage script, and then make sure on its collider is set to is trigger. So let's go ahead and press play. And if I run my ship into one of these guys, nothing happened. Let's see. Here's our player. Let's see. Oh, I think, let's see, enemy ship. We need this damage to equal 100. That way it just blows up our ship. I think that was our problem. So let's drive this guy up here. And are we getting any errors here? Let's see. Let's make sure our enemies, when they spawn in, they have, let's see. Here's our enemy ship. It has a trigger. It has our damage script. Are they all on the same physical plane? Here's our player. Oh, it would also help if I had ship health, the ship health script. That's the other thing on my ship. And anything I do down here will automatically update here. So here's player ship controller. Here's ship health. Let's move these up here. Oh yeah, sorry. Open prefab. Let's move this up here. I like how it catches all this stuff now. So let's go back. And I think now our ship should destroy. I think that was our whole error. There we go. And my ship got destroyed. I just forgot to add this to the script. What we'll look at in another video is we'll look at actually creating a health bar, and that way we can see it in real time get subtracted. All right, I think that's good for now. Yeah, we did a pretty good chunk of work, and now we have our ship can take damage.